Today's daf is daf Yud, Itmar. We learned in the Beis Medrash Omer Rav Nachman, Omer Shmuel, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Chacham tiknu lem lebnos Yisrael, lebsula masayim l'almona mona, vehem hem minuhu, shim Omer Pesach Patzuach Masasi Neman. We're talking about the Takonis Chacham of Ksuba, and hem hem minuhu. And this is an application of a general principle that appears all over Shas, Heim Omru v'Heim Omru. The same Rabbanon who instituted the Chiyuv Ksuba, they instituted his Nemanus, his credibility, even where he has no witnesses, to be Mafsid Hadik Ksuba. And that means that if he claims Pesach Pasuch Matzasi, is a Mekachtos here, I married you Becheskas Pesula, and you turned out to be a Ba'ula, then I want to be Mafsid your Ksuba. She, of course, denies the whole claim. Either she says that she was a Basula, or she says that he was the one who had beer with her. We're going to believe him. So the Gemara asks him, if every time he wants to get out of the Ksuba, he's just going to lie, fabricate the truth, and tell a story about Pesach Pasuch Mitzasi be Mafsid of the Ksuba, then the entire takana of the Ksuba is going to go down the waters. Amarava, no, you don't understand. He's not going to make that claim unless he's telling the truth. Why? If he's lying, then he's been working tirelessly and spending globs of money in order to organize the Sudas Nitsuin. He could have easily have given her a divorce while she was in Arusa without being mafsid all the money for his Su'uda. The very fact that he set up the Su'uda, he was Toreach, and he spent all that money indicates that he really wants to go through with the marriage. And if he claims Pesach Patuach Mitzasi, then he's really telling the truth. My only question here, which is a little bit beyond my comprehension here, is that in the way the Masifta translates the Gemara, when he claims Pesach Pasuach, means that he's being mafsa the Ksuba, then even though initially before he had the beer with her, he wanted that marriage, he very much wanted that marriage to go through. That's why he spent all that money, etc., on preparing the Suda. But now, why is it that he wants to divorce her? It must be because he in truth found a Pesach Pasuach. Now, the language here is Lefichach Rotze Ato Legarsha. I don't understand the language Rotze Ato Legarsha. If he found a Pesach Pasuach, he has no choice but to be Megarisha. And perhaps what the Masifta has in mind, he doesn't clarify, this is the Svek Sveka. And therefore, according to the strict letter of the law, he would be allowed to continue living with her. But he claims that this is not what he bargained for, and therefore he wants out from this marriage, out from the Ksuba. Now, once the Gemara quoted Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, who maintains the view that the Chachamim believed the Baal to say Pesach Pasuach, and that's because Ksuba as an entity is a Takonis Chachamim, Heim Amru Veim Amru. So the Gemara now brings another din, which in a sense is generated by this concept that Ksuba is only a Takonis Chacham, it's not a Deraisa. Tana, we learned in a Braisa, Hoil Uknas Chachamimu Lo Tigbe Element Azibur. So the man marries a woman, writes her a Ksuba. He has three different levels of Karka. He has what's called Ziburis, that's the low quality Karka that's very difficult to work the land, to plant the land, and to produce a harvest. Then there's Beinonis, and then finally there's Idis, which is the top quality. The Chachamim established that she, the Isha, when she collects a ksuba, she can only collect from his low quality karka, which is called ziburis. The Gemara immediately objects to the language of the brisa. The language of the brisa needs rectification. Why? Because it says knasa, as if to say that the entire entity of ksuba is a knas. That's impossible. He didn't do anything wrong. He just married a woman. My knasa, what's his pshia over here that he deserves a knas? Ella, rather reformulate the brisa, ema, hoil v'takonis chachamu lo tigbe el min ziburis. That since the din of ksuba is not doraisa, when there's a chiyuv to pay something on a doraisa level, then you can collect from idis and force the defendant to waive, to fork over the best quality. But if it's only a takonis chachamim, then the gevia rights to collect are from the lowest level of karka, which is called ziburis. And this is all based on a sugim Masechet Bava Kama Daf Hey with regard to ones umefata. Those are chiyuvim that the Torah established to pay. The ones or the mefata has to pay 50 kesef. And once the Torah establishes that, then she or her father will collect that money from idis, because that's written in the Torah. Whatever's written in the Torah is collectible from idis. For example, a mazik, in the case of bar, so the nizak will collect from idis if there's no bnei chori. And that's because the Torah says Shalom Yishalom, he has to pay for the hezek. Now there is going to be a shita Reb Shimon ben Gamliel that ksubins doraisa, derived from the pasuk Moar Habsulos, and according to him, the law would change, and that would give her rights to collect from idis. But now we're holding that ksuba is an enterprise that was established rabbinically, and therefore her collection rights are limited to ziburis. Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer ksubas isha min hatorahu. We're going to derive from the pasuk Gemara Besulos that ksuba is doraisa, and therefore she can collect from idis. The Gemara immediately raises the objection: "Umi Amar Reb Shimon Gamliel Hachi, but Tanya have a brisa, and this brisa is commenting and interpreting the parsha mafata. If a man was mafata a nara, and the father refuses to approve of the marriage of his daughter, his nara, to this mafata, then the Torah says kesef yishkol kimor habasulos. There's a knas that's imposed upon the mafata, and he has to pay kimor habasulos, but the Torah doesn't tell us how much he has to pay. What is the value of moar habasulos, like the payment of, so to speak, a dowry for a basula first marriage? And the brisa says sheyehei zeh kimor basulos, that the nara can collect from the mafate a tashlum that the Torah defines as the tashlum of a basula. And here we're going to borrow from another part of Parshas Kitete, the parsha of Ones, where a man raped a basula, and the Torah says, "V'nasana isha shochevi mola via narocha mishum kosa." So mafata, like ma'anes, where mafata the Torah was so same and didn't specifically tell us how much money he has to pay as a penalty, we're going to borrow it from ma'anes, where the Torah is outspoken that the payment is chamishim kesef. Umar basulos kazeh. Now the Gemara darshans that just like we have a tashlum, a payment, a compensation, or a penalty that the ones has to pay the basula, kazeh, the din in mefata is going to now be the source for the other way around, right? So we're gonna now, once having derived from ones that Gemara Basuls and Mafata is Chamishim Kesef, now we can derive the principle of Ksuba. The Chamishim Kesef of Ones, which is Tikle Kesef, Lomos, is that's going to be derived from Mafata, because in the Parsha Mafata we saw the Pasuk says Kesef Yishkol Gemara Basulos. So just like in the case of Mafata, the case of Ones will pay from Yishkol. What does Yishkol mean? Not from Mos, but rather from Shikle Kesef. These are silver coins. So that there's a mutual reciprocity here in ones umafata. Each one is going to teach and shed a light on the other one. From the chamishim kesef and ones, we derive the conclusion that mafata pays kemar psulos 50 kesef, and from the pasuk in the parsha of mafata that it says chamishim shekel kesef, we can derive the ma'anes. Likewise, will play his tashlum of chamishim kesef in shikle kesef, not in mos. Now the Brisa continues, Mikan somchu chachamim liksuvas isha min haTorah. The language here is very challenging. Somchu chachamim conjures up the image of an asmachta, which is only d'Rabbanan. And yet, in the same breath, he calls ksuvas isha min haTorah. How do you reconcile that? The answer is that although the pasuk is going to be an asmachta, but nevertheless we have halacha l'Moshe Sinai that tells us that a man who marries a woman is mischayev to pay more habsulos. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer ksubas isha ena min haTorah el midivrei sofrim, and that's a contradiction to what we learned until now in the name of Shimon Gamliel, like ksubas isha min haTorah. So first the Gemara says, Epuch. We're going to have to switch around the shitos of the Tanoim in order to reconcile the two statements that are attributed to Rav Shimon Gamliel, which are a head-on collision as to whether Ksubas Doraisa D'Rabbanan. My chazis tifchad basraisa, Epuch kamaisa. So we're going to now establish, and the Gemara is going to question why, that according to Rav Shimon Gamliel, Ksubas Isha derived from Kamara Basulos is Doraisa, and the Chachamim are going to hold that Ksubas Isha Midivrei Sofrim. So Gemara says, all right, you have a stira, but my chos is Tafchas Basraisa, Epuch Kamaisa. Maybe we should change around the first brisa that quotes and transmits in the name of Rav Shimon Gamliel that Ksubas Isha is Min haTorah. Maybe that's the Chachamim Shita, and it's Rav Shimon Gamliel who holds that Ksubas Isha Midivrei Sofrim. My answer is, Hasham ina leila Rav Shimon Gamliel the Amar Ksubas Isha Midaraisa. We have in fact a Mishnah that records the sheet of Rav Shimon Gamliel to the effect that Ksubas Isha is Doraisa. Disnan. What does it say in the Mishnah? Now, for this a little bit of background, we're talking now about a case of Gerushin. What was the case of Gerushin? A man married a woman in a country called Kaputkia, and he divorced her in Eretz Yisrael. He will pay her a ksuba from the mos of Eretz Yisrael, meaning the place where he divorced her. Even though his original eschayvus, when he wrote the ksuba, and when he married his wife, was mos kaputkia, which are very expensive. They are what we call mos gidolos, and they're much larger than the mos of Eretz Yisrael. So we would say that, wait a minute, when he married her, he was mischayev for ksuba to pay with mos. Which mos was he mischayev? Well, he married her in kaputkia. He should be paying up with mos kaputkia. No, he's going to be paying up with the mos of the Makom Gerushin. And the Makom Gerushin in this case is Eretz Yisrael, and the Chachama being Mekil and being lenient, allowing him to pay with the mos of Eretz Yisrael, which are relatively small compared to the mos of Kaputkia. That's the Shita of the Tanakam. Rav Shimon Gamliel disagrees. Omer shenosein lami mos Kaputkia. Why? Because Ksubas Isha Doraisa, he was meshabed her to mos of Kaputkia, these very large, super duper mos. And in that sense, Rav Shimon Gamliel is comparing Ksuba to the paradigmic case of a shtar milva. When a person borrows money, and it doesn't matter where the money has to be paid up, But wherever he borrowed the money, and there was a shtar written on that halva, the shibud is chal on the mos of the place where the shtar was written up, namely the place where the halva was taken. So to in ksuba, argues Rav Shimon Gamliel, the same halacha, the same framework applies, and the chi of shibud ksuba is fixed in stone at the moment of marriage when they wrote the ksuba. It's irrelevant where he gave her the divorce. There was his chayvus, let's say in Mos Kaputkia, and that's what he has to pay no matter where on the face of the earth he'll divorce her. So we see clearly that Rav Shimon Gamliel holds the ksuba's doraisa, and that's why the Gemara says that if we're doing an ipcha, then we should ipcha the second brisa, which attributes to Rav Shimon Gamliel the view that ksubas isha is midirei sofrim. That's not correct. We know from the Mishnah that Rav Shimon Gamliel holds that ksubas isha doraisa, and the chi of doraisa will be set in stone at the moment of the writing of the ksuba, which means at the point of the erisin, which took place in this case in Kaputkia. Again, the bottom line is that according to Rav Shimon Gamliel, ksubas isha minat Torah. So that now, when we apply the principle of ipcha, of epuch, we have to be mahapech the brisa shnia, the second brisa, and say that it's the brisa attributes to the Tanakama that ksubas isha is the brisa. No, that is the opinion of Rav Shimon Gamliel. The din of ksubas isha is the brisa, as we said before, it's collectible from Yiddish. Another way of reconciling the apparent contradiction in Rav Shimon Gamliel. You don't have to turn over upside down the brisa, but kula, all of the brisa is Rav Shimon Gamliel. But chisuri mesor, you have to add something to the brisa. And our brisa, the way we have it in our transmission, is chaser. It's missing something. And here's what we have to add: Kesev yishkol kamal arbusulos. However, subas almana ena min haTorah, ena midivrei Torah, el midivrei sofer. Gamliel omer subas almana ena midivrei Torah, el midivrei sofer. So the entire section here in the middle of this brisa, which shall we say, downgrades the ksuba to a drabanan, that is referring to a ksubas almana, and a ksubas almana, everybody agrees, even Rav Shimon Gamliel, is the Rabbanon. Ahudi also kami the Rav Nachman. There's a Maisa of a Chassan who came in front of Rav Nachman after his Bila Rishona. And he said to Rav Nachman, Pesach Pasuch Matzasi. It's almost as if he knew the Gemara here, so he's just quoting the Gemara. Anyway, I didn't find it to be a Basula. Amalei Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said to the members of his household, Asbuhu Kufre. Beat him up with malchias. They used to make malchus from a branch of a date tree and that's called kufre. And they gave malchus from these branches. And honestly, it was not fun. I don't know it personally, but I know that these kufri, the Gemara rejects as a possible lulav because they have kotzim. And dracheh darchei noam. So you see that we're talking about something that has kotzim. Now, why did Rav Nachman feel that the person, this chassan who comes in front of us after Bila Rishon, he says Pesach Pasum Tzasi, deserves to be shmaitzen? And the answer is because when he tied his Pesach Pasuas Motzasi, I'm absolutely convinced that proves that he's a bucky. He's never been married. So how is he a bucky in these intimate issues? As mevarchas mevarchasa avitolit, which means that the harlots of the city are somehow, I guess, chasing after him or something. Basically, it means that he's not living a very moral lifestyle. That's why he's such a bucky in Pesach Pasuach. We have to beat him up. We want to ask for Rav Nachman who the Omar Meheman. It was Rav Nachman himself who said that Ha'omer Pesach Pasuch Batzasi Neman. He never said they have to give him Malchus. Doesn't seem like he's chashid al znus. So this is the same Rav Nachman who says that we trust him to say Pesach Pasuch Matzasi. It was Rav Nachman in the name. I just want to remind myself. It was Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. 1 second, where was Rav Nachman? Okay. So the Gemara answers Meheman. You're right. We have a principle called Shavia Nafshi Chaticha Disura. So he generates an Isur upon himself, but must be le kufre. Again, we trust. And Rav Nachman. Now I remember, Rav Nachman was the one who went as far as saying that not only do we trust him to create an Isur, which that's a personal nemonis of Shavia Nafshi, but we go even a step further than that. And he's believed to be Mafsid Hadik Tzuba. That was Rav Nachman in the name of Shmuel. Shmuel in turn in the name of Shimon Elazar. And Heim Heminu, they believe him to say Pesach Pasuk Matzasi Shilus Tzuba Kazak Einam Toreh Pesudel Mafsida. Yeah, the truth is that we believe him because he's a buck, but nevertheless we're going to beat him up with Malchus of Kufri, because apparently he was living a very loose kind of a life. That's how he was able to be such a bucky and identify Pesach Pasuch Matzos. Rav Achai Mishane, he wants to reconcile the apparent contradiction of Rav Nachman in a different kind of way. And Rav Nachman did not believe the person who found a Pesach Pasuach. The Brisa says, the quote from Rav Nachman is that he is believed. Over Pesach Pasuch Matzasi Neman. Kan, the Meiser of Nachman that he didn't believe the Chassan is Bibachul. He was never married before. It's the first Be'ila. And we don't believe that he's a Baki. Is Edo Neman. But Kan, here of Nachman, says he's Neman bin Nasu. He was already married in the past. This is not his first Be'ila. He's a Baki in Pesach Pasuach, and he's believed. La Osra, La Psida Ksubasa. Ahudi Asal Kami de Rav Gamliel. There was a Maisa of a Chassan who came after Bila Rishon in front of Gamliel Amalei, and he says to Rav Gamliel, Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, Amar Le. Rav Gamliel says, Shema Hi Tisa. Maybe you did have a Bila Batoya, and that's why you didn't feel the dochak of the Besulim. And you imagined in your mind and concluded that it was Pesach Pasuach. And Emshel Mashal Madavidome, Rav Gamliel adds the following mashal: La Adam Shay Mahalich Be Isham Laila Vafela. Man is leaving his house and he's on the derech, he's on the journey in the middle of the night, pitch black outside, and something is preventing the door from opening. Hita, if he tips over the door towards one side, mitzo pasua, he'll find that the door is open. Just tip over to the other side. Lo hita, mitzo no. If he doesn't move the door in one direction or another, it's locked. He won't be able to get through. And the nimchal in our case is that if he wasn't mater at the time of Be'ilah, like we said, to incline the delis, then he would have found a Pesach no. But since he was mater and he went into a small spot, therefore he said, oh, Pesach Pasua, but it's really not a Pesach Pasua. And this is what Rabbi Gamliel was trying to convince that person who came in front of him and didn't find a Pesach no. Ika Diamri, another transmission of Rabbi Gamliel, it wasn't Rabbi Gamliel asked him Shema Hitisa, the way we had the first transmission. Because it's not shchiach that a person would be mater without deliberately intending to do so. And if he was mater, then he would certainly feel that he was mater. But hachi omerle, this is what Rabbi Gamliel said. Shema b'mezid tisa. Maybe you deliberately did hataya and akarta l'dasha of the avra, and you completely remove the deles and that part of the structure of the deles that keeps it standing. In truth, it was a Pesach no. But at the moment that you did hataya, you already removed habasulit. And again, Hita b'mezid, if he had kavana for hataya, mitzo pasuach, that's why he found it open. However, lo hita b'mezid, if he did not do a hataya deliberately, mitzo no, then he would have found that the Pesach was no. So here also, if you weren't mater b'shas be'ilah, you would have found the Pesach no. But you were mater, and therefore you put a certain force that removed habasul. Chasan after Bila Rishon comes to Rabbi Yomi Ba'al Tiblo, Rabbi Ba'al Tiblo Matzasi down. There was no dam b'sulit. Amra lo, his wife turns to Rabbi Gamliel and he says, Rebbe, I never had any immoral relations out of wedlock. And before this, I was a b'sula. Now, how does she count the claim against lo matzasi dam b'sula? So we'll see in the next piece of the Gemara. Amalahem, Rabbi Gamliel turns to them, he says, Eviu li oso suda. Right after Tashma, she does a kinuach. She wipes herself. And I want to check out if there are any little drops of blood on the suda. Eviu lo hasuda shro b'mayim v'chibso. I don't know how he knew this chachma, Rabbi Gamliel, but then we're talking about Tanoim. So he knew to soak the cloth in water, and that's usually what they do in order to be mechabes the Sudar. So Shara b'mayim v'chibso matzah love kamat tipei damim. In other words, I guess the Shikva Zera had covered these tipei damim. Lamalor Rabbi Gamliel turns to the chassid. He says, "Lech zechei b'mitacha." These tipos dam prove that she was a psula. She never had znus. Go ahead and enjoy your marriage. Amalei Rav Huna bar Mar Brei the Rav mi Parzakya the Rav Ashia non namia navidachi. We also have the minig that when the chassan says he didn't find psulim, we take the sudar and we cleanse it. And after the kibbutz, we look into the sudar and we may find there tipei dam that were covered by shikva zera. Amalei, sort of Ashi, tells Huna, Mar, Bray, the Rava, etc.